What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Iron Obsession podcast. Today I have a very special guest, Gabe Rocha. Gabe Rocha is a sports psychologist and does a lot of other awesome stuff that I'm not going to be able to explain correctly because I'll get my words all mixed up. So tell the people who you are and what you do, man. I'm happy to have you on.
Yeah, man, how's it going? Thanks for having me on first and foremost.
Yeah, anytime.
But yeah, so kind of like you were saying, went to grad school, got my master's in sport and performance psychology
That's
back
awesome.
in 2020. And then I started contracting for the military actually in 2021 as a cognitive performance specialist. And so I've been contracting for the military. I started out with the Army back in 2021, working with
Mhm.
soldiers, working on really enhancing the mental performance skills. And then I switched over to the Air Force in 2022 on their contract. So I've been working with instructor pilots, fighter pilots, student pilots of all kinds since 2022 now, and based out here in San Antonio. And just I love it, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, man. I see everybody posting stuff from like Texas, Vegas, Florida, all these different hubs that are popping up for bodybuilding. And like, it almost gives me this sense of FOMO. It's like, man, I wish I could be there. It seems like it's such a time to be in those places where just this bodybuilding culture is thriving.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, like when I first got to San Antonio, I moved here because I found the Muscle Factory. I actually came here
Oh,
on a
okay.
work trip in January of 2023 because I was originally in Mississippi when I first got on the Air Force contract. And my company sent me over here to San Antonio for a work trip. And I was like, all right, well, while I'm here, I might as well go find like if there's any cool gyms in San Antonio.
Yeah.
So I Googled bodybuilding gym San Antonio, Muscle Factory popped up, and I was like, I'm gonna go check this place out. Long story short, I went in there, I hit a leg day, I absolutely fell in love with the gym,
Yeah.
and I was like, I need to move to San Antonio just so I can train here at this gym. And so after the work trip ended, I called my boss and I was like, hey, if there's an opening in San Antonio, please call me. Like, I want to transfer.
Yeah.
A few months later, calls me, he's like, hey, like, Gabe, are you still willing to transfer to San Antonio? I was like, I'll start packing my bags tonight.
That has got to be the most bodybuilder reason to move, right? Because, hey, they got a gym I like.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like I love it here. It's like the culture's great. The guy who just won the nationals for bodybuilding overall,
Uh,
Devin Barnes, he trains at our gym.
nice.
John Jewett trains at our gym. We have like 30, 40 different pros that are at our gym. So
Wow.
um I'm a big proponent of your environment being a huge factor in your success.
Oh, yeah. And for me with my environment, so I'm based out of North Carolina, very very small portion of North Carolina. I'm so bad with geography, man. I know we're on the eastern side of North Carolina. That's about it. We're about 2 hours away from the coast or so. So like if we want to take a day trip to the beach during the summer, we can do that. But what I'm getting at is, unfortunately, there are not a lot of bodybuilders in my area.
Yep.
We've got a decent amount of people who used to compete back in like the 90s, maybe early 2000s. A lot of power lifters and a lot of
Mhm.
strongmen, especially. But there's just not really like a huge bodybuilding culture here. And I'm doing my part to try to kind of make that pop up a little bit. Just, me doing my thing. I also own a gym in the area with my father. We try to kind of outfit it to the best of our abilities. But, you talking about your gym, the muscle factory and stuff. I see these posts of these gyms and like, I'm like, man, I want to, somebody give me $1 million so I can remake my whole gym, please.
Yeah, dude, that's a dream, honestly. Like
Yeah,
having your own gym
it's very
and just
nice.
being able to hand pick every single piece of equipment in there and
Yeah,
just know that everyone who does train there, they're going to love it. Like I see
yeah,
Joe Bircher, your coach, like he talks about counterculture and like they
yeah.
just got that new piece in the leg press, and I was just like, dude, that's so sick. And
It's
that's
so hype.
that's how Roland is here, our owner for Muscle Factory.
Yeah.
I know John Jewell will give him a suggestion on like, hey, we need this piece, and a few months later it shows up, and it's just like, oh, cool, Christmas morning.
Yeah, I've done that with a few pieces. We're pretty stacked out, so at this point, it's just time to start replacing old pieces for newer, better pieces. But like as far as like square footage, we're pretty maxed out on a lot of our stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, like man, we'll drive all the way. My dad does a lot of this more than me because I'll actually do a lot of the front end stuff, like the
Mhm.
more so the management of the facility, right?
Right.
So in the past, I mean, I think he's driven all the way up to like I want to say close to New York to get a piece.
Damn.
It's like a good 10-hour drive. I could be
Yeah.
wrong. It may not be that far away, but he's taking whole day trips to find pieces of equipment. Because man, some people don't know what they got. Let me tell you,
Yeah.
I've gotten multiple stair steppers, $90, $100.
It's a steal.
Yeah, I'll spend the gas money for that, man. It's worth it.
Yeah. Honestly, that reminds me a lot of Evan Centopani. I don't know
Yeah.
if you listened to his recent podcast on
Mhm.
with Ron Partlow and Dusty, but
Yeah.
he's like he's got a gym in his basement and then he'll go pick up new pieces and he'll like
Just leave them.
swap them out and he'll like weld new pieces together and stuff to
Yeah.
fix them. And then he's got pieces at his buddy's home gyms and he's like, hey, this is my equipment, but you can use it while I
Yeah.
don't have the space for it right now. So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's always pretty cool too.
That's kind of the best of both worlds, right? Because you get to kind of like have your own gym, but also not have to deal with members. So it's kind of cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so just going back into your story there, what made you want to overall just get into, I guess, it is kind of still, educate me here. How much of what you do is like considered psychology per se versus like other aspects of it, if that makes sense? 'Cause I'm not trying to say like
Right.
you're, because you're not like a
Yeah.
straight up psychologist. You're kind of like this other thing that is specified for what you do, right?
Correct. So the way I kind of like to break it down and frame it for people is I have my master's in sport and performance psychology. So
Okay.
I am not a clinical psychologist. So
Hmm.
I'm not here to diagnose or treat any sort of like mental health disorders.
Hmm.
What I am here to do is really just kind of identify any sort of mental performance barriers that someone may have and kind of
Oh.
help them develop strategies and kind of structure different tools that they can use to help them perform at a high level.
Hmm.
Now, there are going to be times where I might be working with a client who may have some sort of mental health disorder, where it might be something like, a generalized anxiety disorder or
Hmm.
ADHD. And that's all really good information for me to know if they choose to disclose that.
Hmm.
But I'm not here to treat that specific thing. It's more so, hey, how can we develop some of these tools so that way you can still go perform at a high level, even though some of these things might be present as well.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. And what kind of sparked your interest into the field and kind of shaped that career path?
Yeah, so I knew I wanted to go into the field of psychology
Hmm.
back in like 10th grade, but at that point it was more so I wanted to do like marriage and family therapy,
Oh, interesting.
clinical psychology, that kind of thing. Um, but then what happened was my junior year of football, I got injured during
Oh.
our playoff football game. I had someone fall on my ankle, rolled over my ankle, and then went into the off season, had to deal with the injury. And while I was going through rehab for my ankle, I actually picked up a book by Tim Grover, who was Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan's sports psychologist.
Oh, yeah.
And once I picked that book up, I read that book in a day and a half. And as I was reading it, I was like, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. So I already had the interest in psychology. And then once I realized I
Hmm.
could do that with athletes, I was like, oh, yeah, this is the thing. And so over the course of like that rehab, I started implementing some of these different sports psychology tools and techniques and kind of went down the rabbit hole of researching, well, how do I incorporate some of these things into my own rehab, into my own training once I'm healthy again? And then from junior year to senior year, I went from about 185 pounds playing guard to like 230 pounds playing center.
Nice.
And with the added like 45 pounds, like I spent that off season going into my senior year, like just about as focused, if not more focused than I was during my bodybuilding prep. And so
Nice.
that was the first time that I had ever experienced that kind of mental level of being, locked in, like
Yeah.
the kids like to say these days. And making those changes myself, I was like, oh, if I can do this, I want to help other people be able to do this as well. And
Yeah.
so at that point, going into my senior year, I was like, I already know exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life.
That is super cool. And I like how a lot of the times you mentioned there helping others. Like your career, like for sure, you're meant to do what you're doing right now because multiple times there, it's not about what the path can do for you. It's about what can you do to help other people with this path. So that's super cool.
Yeah. And I will say, like, there's obviously like really good perks to have as
Oh
well.
yeah, yeah.
Like, especially contracting right now for the Air Force. Like, I get to go up and fly with them. I've flown in the back of a
Oh,
fighter jet. I've
that's
flown in the
awesome.
back of a T-6, a student trainer. So it's like there's perks that come along with it. But at the end of the day, like my approach to helping with sports psychology, it's almost like I'm trying to work myself out of a job because if I'm doing my job well, then I'm able to equip you with the tools and strategies that you don't need me anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the main goal. It's not like, like the pharmaceutical industry where
Yeah.
it's, we're giving you this medicine or whatever, but you have to stay on it forever. It's if I can get you good to a point where you don't need me anymore, then that's great. But also
Yeah.
refer me to your friends.
Yeah, yeah, dude, that is exactly how I look at personal training and how I do it
Yeah.
because I don't really, I've never really like personal trained anybody who's a bodybuilder per se. Because, like I said, in my area, that's not really a thing. But
Yeah.
I've helped, I coached weightlifting at a high school. And before that, because this is basically the high school that I went to, always been really into the community there. Me and my brother both went there, so we are pretty deep rooted into it. So I would get a lot of referrals from the kids there in weightlifting or in football, different sports like that, and they would come work with me at my gym. And I would always say my most successful clients are not the ones who just stop coming out of the blue, right? Because people have their different reasons for stop working with the trainer. My most
Right.
successful clients are the ones who I consider graduated. They know what
Yeah.
they do. They know how to build a program. They know how to execute. You don't need to spend your money on me anymore. You just got to, build your own path from here.
Yeah. And that's the big goal with all this.
Yeah. And it sucks as a, like if you don't have like a lot of clients, which I'm not a person who I don't like to have a lot of personal training clients because man, people kind of suck if I'm being honest, and like I don't have the mental maturity to be able to like suppress that. So I
Mhm.
typically would have like 2 to 3, maybe 4 in person people at a time. And if you only have a couple people in person, it's like losing one of them can be a big impact, but it's also super satisfying because you're sending them in the right direction.
Yeah, and I'm kind of in the same spot as you too, where, having my full-time job contracting with the Air Force and then also pursuing bodybuilding myself, that only leaves me with so many hours in a day. So my typical work hours now with like having my own sports psych business on the side, working with mainly bodybuilders, but also other athletes as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm usually only working from like 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Friday. So I've got a roster right now of clients that I'm working with, about 15 to 17 clients.
That's a lot. Yeah.
Um, which is solid, but it's also like I'll see some of them like once a week. I'll see some of them every 2 weeks. I'll see some of them like once a month every now and
Mm-hmm.
then. So it's not super consistent with everyone, but
Mm-hmm.
I also don't want to get to like that upper limit
Yeah.
where it's like I'm coming home and working another 3 hours every single night for weeks
Yeah.
on end too, because I feel like I would just burn out and
You want to keep
end up
that
losing
passion
some of the
alive.
passion.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. We're on the same
Yep.
wavelength there.
Exactly.
But yeah, so just kind of continuing along the line there, I know a good bit of your backstory, but just for the audience, what would you say was kind of the catalyst for you and your training partner getting together, Kyrie Cooper? Like, what made you lock in and kind of realize, like, oh, we can really build something special here? Because I feel like you guys both psychologically everything like that have an awesome connection and training partnership, and that's something that I'm trying to find in my area. Like, how do you
Yeah.
find a training partner is kind of what I'm getting at, and how do you know you two click?
Yeah, so funny story there. We actually started training together because right when I signed up for the Muscle Factory, I was probably there for about a month or so, maybe
uh
2 months max. But I was getting ready to do a set of pendulum squats. And pendulum squats, like when you fail out on that, like you're buried in the hole, right? Because it goes so low. And I had seen him in the gym and I was like, oh, this dude looks pretty jacked. Like, so I just went up to him. I was like, hey, man, like he was working on the Smith machine right in front of the pendulum. And I was like, hey, do you mind spotting me real quick? And so he's like, yeah, sure, no problem. He's like, how many reps do you want? And I was like, just however many until I fail. And he was just like, all right, let's see it.
Yep.
So I ended up hitting that set, got like one or two force reps there, and then he was like, good shit. Right. And then pretty much like that's how it started, right? And then
Yep.
after that, it's like we'd see how each other train, like we'd see each other in the gym, and then out of nowhere, it was just like, yo, like what are you hitting? Oh, were you hitting back today too? Let's do it together. Right.
Yep.
And that's really how it all started. And luckily, at the time when we started training together, we were at a point where our schedules lined up. So it's
Hmm.
like we're in there 4:30 p.m. every single day. Unfortunately, we are no longer training together just because
Hmm.
schedules
Okay.
conflicted. He's actually in the Air Force.
Yeah.
So his schedule kind of bumps around, and I think he's in a place now where he wants to kind of go at it alone a little bit more. So
Okay.
just kind of the puzzle pieces really didn't fit together anymore. But it's
Mm.
like I'll still see him in there, and like everything is great. So
Yeah,
it's
of
like
course.
he was at my birthday dinner last weekend, sitting
Oh
right
yeah.
next to me. So things are still great there.
And for everybody watching, we're recording this on the 19th. Your birthday is on the 20th, correct?
Correct.
Well, happy early birthday.
Thank you.
Super grateful for the opportunity to do this episode because I'm sure you probably got a lot of other things you could be doing on the night before your birthday, right?
Nah, man, I got one more meal to get in and go to sleep.
I'm right there with you. One more meal, Ninja Creamy, and then it's it. But so with all that being said, are you looking for a new training partner, or are you wanting to go alone on it yourself for a while just to see how that is?
Man, I think over the last few weeks, especially, I think I've been pretty dialed in training solo. It's like
Nice.
I'd be open to it if the right person came along,
Yeah.
but it would have to be such a good fit
Mm.
that it would have to be more beneficial training with someone else than it would be to train by myself.
Okay.
There's certainly people within the muscle factory where it's like if they were like, hey, like let's work together, like let's train together, I would absolutely jump on that opportunity. But I also know other people don't necessarily have the same scheduling flexibility that I do.
Mm.
And so it's like, hey, I'm in here same time every single day. And if they're working different types of jobs where it's like, oh, I have free time this day, and then I have 6 p.m. available this day and 4 p.m. this day, it's like it just doesn't really line up.
That's always been my issue too. So it sounds
Mhm.
like you have a very like kind of wide open schedule, right? What does that look like again? Because I know you mentioned the scheduling for your client side of thing, but what is like the day job look like, so to say?
Yeah, so honestly, most days start with me waking up early, getting the fasted cardio in, getting into
Hmm.
work, usually into work between like 7:15 to 7:30.
Okay.
And then at that point, it's just an 8 hour day from whenever I get in.
Oh, okay.
So I'm lucky in that the contracting world, at least the contract that I'm on, is they're just like, hey, get your 40 hours in every week as long
Hmm.
as they're within reasonable hours that you're actually serving the customer. So it's like you can't be there till like
Yeah.
9 p.m. knowing that people go home at like 5.
Yeah.
So I'm typically in there like till 3:15 or 3:30, and then I drive to the gym, and then I usually train between 4:30. I'm usually in there for about an hour and a half, 2 hours if it's a hard leg day.
Yeah.
Usually home by 6:30, and then I can shower, I can eat a meal real quick, and then I handle my private clients from 7 to 10.
Okay, nice. So you've got a good little bit of flexibility in there. But with me, I can, working at the gym, if I want to train at 10 in the morning, I can. If I want to train at 10 at night, I can. So it's
Yeah.
always been really hard for me to find somebody who has a schedule that aligns with mine. Otherwise, I could make my schedule align to theirs, but then I got to change my shit. I don't like that.
Yeah. Well, not only that too, but you've also got to think about like the split and then also
Yes.
like what exercises do they like and what is their training style like. And
Yeah.
I've been very lucky over the course of my life in bodybuilding that I've had multiple really, really great training partners who've
Oh,
been
nice.
adaptable, they've been flexible. Just kind of thinking back, because I started bodybuilding back in 2015 at Gold's Gym in Venice.
Nice.
And so
That's a
back then
hell
it
of a
was still
place to
really
start, man.
cool.
Hell
Dude,
of a
man,
place.
you're telling me. So I like to tell this story too because
Okay.
it's very reminiscent of the times there. But it's like I remember walking in, it's like Dexter Jackson's in there, Sergio Oliva Jr.'s in there, Sean Roden's in there. But I was training at 24 Hour Fitness before that, and then I went into Gold's Gym, and I remember being really intimidated, even though I really enjoyed bodybuilding, because it's like you see
Yeah.
all these pro bodybuilders, right?
Yeah, man.
And there's one day I was just like really not in a good place. And I was like, man, I think I'm going to cancel my membership. Like, I just don't really feel like I fit in. I'm not a real bodybuilder.
Mm.
And I'm in there and it's a back day for me and I'm doing pull-ups. And I can only get like three, maybe four pull-ups at a time. And so I think I was on like my third set and I'm like struggling to like get another pull-up. And out of nowhere, like someone grabs my legs and they spot me and they spot me for like two or three more reps. And then after I got done, they were just like, dude, like good stuff. I turn around, it's Sergio Oliva Jr.
Oh, okay.
And I hadn't really talked to him at all before then, but he was just like, dude, like you're crushing it, like keep it up.
Hell yeah.
And that interaction is what made me stay at Gold's Gym. I was like, oh, like the community here, they do want you here. Just as long as you work hard,
Yeah.
they'll respect you. And
It's
that's what
just
kept me in there and kept me bodybuilding.
yeah. I guess when we're just kind of getting started out, we don't realize that almost standoffish kind of attitude a lot of builders have is it's not like a negativity thing. It's just like a stay in your own lane type thing. People just want to let other people work in peace, basically. And a lot of times that can come off as, the guy with his hat down and the
Yep.
headphones on. It's like they don't want to be talked to. Honestly, most guys like that are pretty chill. And now don't talk to him mid set. That's a different story. But,
Yeah.
in between sets or whatever, he's drinking out of his cup, talk. I'm sure a lot of people, like if you go up to them and you ask them, hey, can you give me a spot? They're absolutely going to do it, even in an intimidating scenario like being at Gold's Venice.
Yeah, and that was the beauty of it too, is like from there, that was when I got one of my first training partners. His name's Devin Baldinger. He's out in Vegas.
Mm,
He's a national level open bodybuilder. I think he didn't do any national shows this year, I believe, but he did compete this year. But he's one of Justin Jacoby's dudes, and dude looks great.
nice.
But I started training with him, and that was one of those times where it was like, hey, what time do you need to train at? Like, what exercises can we do that are going to work for both of us? And just having that synergy just goes
Mm.
such a long way.
Sounds like a lot of your, or at least the ones that I've heard of so far, a lot of these training partnerships just seem very natural. They just kind of happen on their own. Which
Absolutely.
Which for me, I was like, oh, maybe he can get me like the secret sauce on how to find a good training partner I connect with. But I probably the best bet is to just let it. It's if it's meant to happen, it's going to happen, basically.
Yeah, and I think for someone like you who like you work in the gym, like you
Yeah,
probably have a pretty good idea of just looking around, being like, who do I even think would make for a good training partner? Because you
yeah.
probably see most of the people that walk in and out of there every day.
And most of the people that would be a good training partner train at like 10 o'clock at night, whereas I train at ten
Yeah.
o'clock in the morning. So,
Yeah.
but yeah. Anyway, so getting off the topic of training partners, let's kind of delve into the mental side of bodybuilding, as I would call it. And the first thing I want to get into that I think a lot of people can use in their day to day bodybuilding is what are some mental cues that you give yourself within a training session to either amp yourself up or to calm yourself down when you need to kind of chill out in between sets.
Yeah, so honestly, starting with the first one of like kind of amping yourself up, right?
Mhm.
There's quite a few different cues that I'll use, some of them being internal, some of them being external. So like
Mm.
we all have specific like videos and stuff that we can
Yeah.
point to that are going to help hype us up. Like for me, I'm a Dorian Yates guy, right? So it's like
Mm.
anything blood and guts related is or anything Jordan Peters
I was
related.
I was just
Like
about to say, yeah.
I have so much TVJP gear and I have like Dorian Yates shirts and stuff. But anytime I see any of those edits on Instagram, which is like basically my entire explore page, it's
Nice.
like save, save, save. So it's like I'll use those in between sets to kind of get myself ready. Um, I try to be very intentional about when I'm picking my spots and using those
Mm.
because the emotional cost of getting yourself amped up for a big set can be detrimental over the course of a session.
Mm.
So for me, it's like I'm not going to use like a Dorian Yates video if I'm doing a set of like preacher curls or anything
Yeah.
like that, right? But if I'm loading up a bar and I'm doing, some stiff-legged deadlifts or I'm doing a hack squats or a leg press, then it's like, yeah, I do want something that's going to get me quite amped up. Internally, man, I did Texas State November of 2024, got sixth place, dead last in my class. So it's like
I've
that
I've had
alone
that
is
happen.
motivation enough,
Yeah.
right? So I have a very, very vivid imagery of what it was like standing on stage and just kind of being out on the side and they call and in sixth place competitor number Gabriel Rocha, and it's just like making that walk to the line to get your sixth place, what
Mm.
I call pretty much like a participation medal. That gets me going pretty good. So from an internal
Yeah.
standpoint, that'll do it. From an external standpoint, specific videos, specific songs that I use,
It's memorable.
um, those are good ones that get me amped up.
Yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from with the dead last thing, man. My first show that I did, I dropped from 231 down to like I think peak low weight was like 165. I stepped on stage
Damn.
on like yeah, like 169 or 170 for my first show. Dead last in everything I did. It was crushing. And yeah, that's definitely something you can use to fuel your training. And I talk a lot on here about how in the past my training was very subpar before I got with Joe, just because the previous coach that I was working with, just that wasn't really his thing. Like that, he was more on like the diet and the supplement side of thing. Training, you just kind of do your own thing. And me, I'm not, or at least I think now I could probably have a good handle on it. But at that time, I was not mature enough to handle my own training. But I
Mhm.
guess just through sheer emotion, because that's really what it was for 2 years of an off season, just emotion. Looking back on that last placing and just fueling that fire, I was able to, on my second show, that was my first show, stepping on stage around 170. My second show, I competed at around 197. So just from through
Damn.
grit, I think I was able to
Yep.
do that. So I totally get that. And then music is another huge one. But
Hmm.
an issue I find with myself is I'm very, very OCD. So I'll listen to the same song on repeat 25 times in a session, and
Me too.
I'll burn out on it though. And then I gotta find new fuel to the fire. It's like, man, there's only so many good songs out there, right? Like,
Yeah. See, I'm a bit autistic, especially like with my
yeah.
music choice too, because there's for me, like the only time I'll use like heavier rock is if it's a back day or a leg day.
Mm,
Everything else, like if it's a chest day, I don't know why, but it's like rap and hip hop. That's what I'm going to. Or if it's like a shoulder day or
mm.
whatever it might be. But back and leg days are specifically for like that heavy hitting rock.
I have a specific leg day playlist. Always
Yep.
have.
Yep.
Yeah, and I got to figure out a way to kind of use that fuel without completely burning it all the way down to the wick, right? Like, have you found that you do that as well? You just completely run through a song or a certain emotional cue, or have you found ways to continue to benefit from the same one over and over again, or is it just continuously evolving?
Yeah, I think it's just again, it comes back to like the intentionality of it. So it's like if there's a specific song that I find on a certain day that I'm like really, really getting along with, then I will use that song specifically for like top sets,
Mm,
working sets. But then if I'm like in between sets, or if I'm in between exercises, or if I'm just doing like the warm-up sets before the top set, I won't use that song.
mm.
So it's like it really is just for the actual whatever 60 seconds that the set takes me. Well, and then adding in like the 20 or 30 seconds before the set happens, where it's like
Okay.
there's a specific part of the song I'll
Yep.
listen to, and then it's like once it hits that specific part, it's like, all right, cool, the set's starting now.
Yeah, that's why the heavier rock, like you were mentioning, especially like heavy metal as well, they typically will have something called a breakdown towards the like
Yep.
three quarters to the end of the song or something like that. So you can just like I'm gonna skip to like this point of the track, and this is like a good bet. There's gonna be something good here, right?
Yep. I'll give you one of my go-tos,
Okay.
Edge of the Blade by Journey.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah. That. So like for example, you can see all these guitars in the background and stuff. Like I've played like extreme metal. Like I'm talking like tech death where you can't understand what they're saying. But
Yep.
I wouldn't necessarily consider that like heavy in terms of that, but
For sure.
heavy emotional, big
Yep.
emotional song. Love that song.
Yep. Yep.
Journey, man. That's funny you say that because actually towards the latter half of contest prep, I was playing Journey on repeat, man.
That reminds me of Jay Cutler. That's how I got into Journey,
Oh
is
yeah.
because there was like an old podcast or something of Jay Cutler talking about the fact that when he would drive like several hours to go to Crisacito to do his check-ins, he would have like the Journey album and he would just play it on a loop while he's driving.
That's interesting. I remember him
Yeah.
talking about Journey, but I don't remember him saying that it was on the drive to Esito. He's like hyping himself up for the check-in. That's cool.
Yep.
That's super cool. So then, as far as cues go for hyping yourself down, so to say, what does that look like?
Honestly, it really just comes down to like breath work for
Breath
me.
work.
And then also using music as well. Another big thing I'll use as well is like some sort of grounding technique. So there's, especially like on my leg days, I like to train barefoot,
Mm,
or if I'm not, so I'll walk around barefoot and then I have my actual squat shoes I use for like
mm,
leg press or any actual squatting movements.
mm,
But for everything else, I like to be barefoot, just kind of feel the ground. Um, and so what I'll do is like I'll walk to like a specific part of the gym just kind of to be by myself if it's like tucked away behind a machine or something.
mm.
And I will just sit there and kind of go through like a body scan where it's like you're really just feeling all the sensations throughout your body. So it's like I feel the weight of my feet on the ground. I'm feeling, my sweats touching my legs. I'm feeling my shirt sleeves touching my arm and just kind of going up and down the body just to kind of really make myself present. Because a lot of times when I am hyping myself up, it's because I'm focused on something outward,
Mm,
right? But if I can kind of bring everything back to myself and just focus on the lived experience and the different senses, then that usually gets me to kind of bring down um, that physiological response.
wow, that's super interesting. I would never would have thought about all of those different tactile senses coming into play, like with the the cloth on your pants and your shirt and stuff. That's super interesting. I would have never thought about
No,
that.
no.
Yeah. So yeah, that. Which one of those do you think you rely heavier on, the amping yourself up or the calming yourself down? Which is easier for you to pull off, so to say, or are they just both
He's
pretty?
I would say hyping myself up is the one that I have to do more often
Okay.
just because naturally I'm pretty calm person, pretty stable.
Mm,
Um, but then obviously when there is like a high output performance that I need to perform, then it's like I want to get my emotional state, my mental baseline up to what the performance is calling for.
hmm
Right. It's like I don't want to be at that stable baseline when I'm about to go hit a set of stiff-legged deadlifts. It's like
Yeah.
I want something to kind of drive it, right?
hmm
There has to be a little bit of aggression in there for me. Now, I'm not hyping myself up to like a 10 out of 10 where I'm
Okay.
getting like an adrenaline dump by any means. But if we were to kind of put it on a scale, it's like I typically walk around like a 4 or 5.
Mm,
If I'm about to hit a heavy set, I like to get myself up to like a 7.5 or an 8.
okay.
And then I
So
and then the rest of the training I like to be around like a 6.
So that's very interesting because as you're saying that, I'm thinking, you're using those like correlations of I'm a four, I'm at a 10, I'm at a seven.
Mhm.
And when I'm sitting here thinking about it, I'm probably usually around like a six at all times.
Mhm.
Like I'm a bit of a anxious person. I'm
Mhm.
always like kind of hyper vigilant of my surroundings, stuff like that, just generalized anxiety, stuff like that. So for me, a big issue is actually twofold. First thing, I can almost hype myself up too much, get to that 10 like you're talking about,
Yep.
and then not be able to come down. And then on
Yep.
the other end, sometimes if I try to calm myself down in between sets, I can't get back that 10 or high end of it. Let's say we're aiming
Mhm.
for 8, I can't reach it. It's kind of like I blew the load, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, and honestly, I think that is a really important skill that people can develop is learning how to titrate up and titrate down within
Mm,
a session. So one thing I always used to hear a lot of, especially from like Ben Chow and Luke Sando, rest in peace.
mm,
But like Ben Chow talks about the sessions together where they were training and in between sets like they're joking around, they're laughing, but
yeah.
as soon as they get into the set, it's like, oh no, like he's in the set, like he's
Mm,
performing maximal output. Like he's giving you everything he's got. As soon as he racks that bar, he's back to joking and laughing. I know Dusty Hanshaw is that way as well too, where he kind of talks about like
yeah.
flipping the switch. And I think that being able to develop that skill also helps with that feeling of what you're talking about is like kind of like I'm blowing the load because you're trying to sustain that 10 for too long.
Mm,
And I also think that there's a bit of anxiety that comes with that as well, where once you get to that 10, you feel like you have to sustain it. And if you lose it,
yes.
then there's this like, oh, I lost it and I can't get it back. And that causes stress and then
Mm,
that impacts the session negatively because now you're thinking, oh well, now I'm not going to be able to perform well.
mm.
Versus if you can flip the switch on and off and go back and forth, then there's no anxiety around the fact that, oh, I'm not going to be able to perform for that top set of whatever.
That makes a lot of sense, and yeah, that's definitely the biggest struggle for me. Is I'll have certain days where I just can't quite get it to where I need to. I'm still able to go to failure. I'm still able to get a PR, but it's like I know there's this extra level in the back of my mind that if I could just unlock it on that day, I could get even more out of it. Instead of getting an extra 2 reps that day, I could get an extra 3, extra 4. It's just maybe that's in my head though. I'm not sure. Maybe I am giving it all there in that moment. I just don't realize it, or I'm too anxious about it. Something like that.
Right. And that's actually something that we talk about in the field of sport and performance psychology. It's called the IZOF theory.
Ah,
IZOF. It's an individualized zone of optimal functioning.
hmm,
And so essentially what this theory states is that for any given task, each individual has a like certain level of physiological activation that they need to complete that task to the best of their abilities.
Mm,
So for someone being able to complete a 20 rep set of leg press, like they need to
mm,
be a 10 out of 10 and
yeah.
like they need to just hit it hard. For someone like Kyrie, who my old training partner, like he needs to go into that set with like a very low level of emotional stimulation
Hmm.
because he wants to just focus on like execution, staying very present. It's not going to hurt his performance, but he's able to really just focus on the execution piece and still give full effort versus someone else. Like if they need to be at a 10 out of 10, he might need to be at like a 7 out of 10. And then for
Hmm.
someone like you might need to be at like an 8 out of 10. So it's really about identifying what your specific individual zone of optimal functioning is for a specific task.
Interesting. Yeah, training to failure, or true failure at least, is kind of a new thing for me. So I
Uh,
find often if I don't take it all the way to 10, that I feel like I didn't really get there. Because
mhm.
failure, we can sit here all day and say that failure is an objective thing, like, it moves or it doesn't, but it doesn't always feel that way. Sometimes it feels like there's a little bit of pliability within the level of failure, which to somebody
Mhm.
outside looking at it probably sounds insane. It's like, hey, it is or it is not. But we know in our minds what we're truly capable of. And we can always look back. I mean, great example, Ronnie Coleman always talks about how he looks back on that 800-pound squat and he's like, I
Mhm.
knew I had two more in me. It's like,
Yep.
only, I guess only he knows that.
Yep. And that's where I go back to kind of setting your standards for what the training session needs to be on any given day. So it's like
Mm,
you walk into the gym, that might mean spending a couple minutes in your car beforehand. It's like you got good music playing, right? And it's kind of setting the intent for what the session needs to be. Because
mm-hmm.
not every single session when you walk into the gym is going to be a 10 out of 10 intensity session, whether
Yeah.
it's from a mental standpoint, whether it's because physically, like you're just kind of run down and maybe you don't need to necessarily take a full deload day, but maybe the PRs aren't just going to be there today.
Mm,
And so can you still walk into the gym, perform to your max level of effort, even if that level of effort isn't a new PR, or even if you're not
mm.
matching last week's reps, and still walk away knowing that it was productive? And that's where like the psychology part comes in because we can easily trick ourselves into walking into the gym, oh, I didn't PR this or I didn't at least match reps. Therefore, the training session was a failure.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've struggled with in the past. And
Mhm.
thankfully, I've been, especially since starting to work with Joe, I've been in a really good groove with my training. Like, I think I've had one or two bad workouts in the past 4 months, 5 months, something
It's
like that.
incredible. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
I'm on a great string, and one of those workouts was kind of iffy just because we had, again, new to training to true failure, so
Mhm.
I had just kind of trained myself into a hole without realizing it, and then
Yeah.
out of nowhere, I'm like, oh, I'm buried. How am I going to climb
Yeah.
out?
So honestly, like one thing that I do with a lot of my clients as well, and this is some free sauce that anyone else can take. One thing I'll have them do is like, for instance, if say you've got your logbook right here, right,
Hmm.
and you write down, right, you've got your weight, you've got your reps. I also have them write down two more scales right next to it.
I stole that from you.
Effort, effort, and execution,
Mm,
right?
yep.
So on those days where, the weight didn't increase or the reps didn't increase, you can look back at your scale and say, well, what was my effort on that set? If the effort was a 10 out of 10 and the execution was a 10 out of 10, even if I didn't get the result that I wanted to from a numerical standpoint, you still know that you trained to failure based on whatever your capabilities were for that
Yeah.
specific set.
Yeah, I had completely forgotten that I got that from one of your stories because I saw in your logbook somewhere you had level of execution and
Mhm.
stuff like that. I have that in my logbook now. That's been super helpful.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where you can walk away from a training session. If you've got a tens and nines across the board
Mm,
for effort and execution, but none of your numbers went up, you can at least walk away from the session and be like, okay, well, I executed to a high level. I gave it a really high level of effort. This workout wasn't a waste.
mm.
Versus when you're not looking at it through that lens and you're just looking at weight and reps, you're going to look at that session and be like, oh man, I didn't progress. I must be getting worse. because that's the conversation that people tend to have.
For sure. And then another, which this is obviously a super unique situation to me, but I'm sure there maybe even if only a few people listening have a similar situation can benefit, then it's worth it. But with me running the gym, I could be in the middle of a set, and out of the corner of my eye, I see somebody at the front desk waiting for me to come sign them up.
Yep.
So I have to oftentimes be interrupted in a workout, right? So, what are some mental cues that you would kind of help snap in and snap out? Because I can't, and this is something I've really struggled with in the past, having like, I guess I would say an attitude or whatever. I can't walk up to a gym member to renew them or to sign up a new member and be in that fight portion of the fight or flight aggression up to here, like tears coming out of my eyes, like just ready to kill something. I can't walk up to the front desk and do that. And that's something I still will struggle with from time to time. So, what are some cues you think you could help someone snap in and snap out in a situation like that?
Right. So something like that, the way I would kind of try to frame it, well, first and foremost, you have to find something that works specifically for you. I know
Mm,
specifically for me what would work. And this is something that comes back from having like that sports background, especially playing football, because that
hmm.
was the sport that I really aligned with. And I think it kind of
Same
set
here.
the foundation for like the mental performance stuff. When I look back on my days in football, I always remember, before the game, we're all in the locker room before you
Yeah.
walk out, right? And so we're all in the locker room and like we're doing like our pregame prayer and like you got your music on and whatever.
Mm,
But then as you're walking outside of the building to go out onto the field, there's a doorway that you have to cross, right?
mm,
And normally when you're walking through that door, like everyone like they smack the top of the door, right?
yeah.
And so for me, that became like a mental cue for myself that like once you cross this threshold, it is no longer pregame, like it is now game,
Mm,
right? And so crossing that threshold for me always signaled to myself, we got to go be ready to perform now, right?
mm,
And so if I were in your shoes, I know what would work for me is if I'm in the middle of a training session and I have to go help someone out at the front desk, I will find some sort of way after that interaction is done to almost like reset where it's like you're re-walking back into the training session now. So
mm.
whether it's like walking through a specific door, for me specifically, I would probably walk out the front door, take a few deep breaths, and then scan back in and walk back into the gym.
That's a
And
good
that's
idea.
like oh, I'm crossing this threshold again.
Mm.
And then crossing that threshold now becomes the cue for, oh, it's time to go perform.
That's interesting. I'm it got hopefully I don't get interrupted tomorrow, but if I do, I'm gonna try that. That's
Yeah.
very interesting, and I like how you keep bringing up you physically go to places. It's not because a lot of the time I will just sit in the same spot and try to do this. I think actually moving your body into a different area or zone of even just the same building, that I can see that being a big role into that. Yeah, and I would say I can kind of get myself almost too amped up, right? But as of late, I have been working on that. It's something that I'm trying to get better at. But now I'm kind of having that problem, like I was talking about earlier, of I've hyped myself all the way down, right? So
Hmm.
all the adrenaline is gone. I'm completely leveled out. It almost even affects my pumps sometimes, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
But now I think with you saying, exit the door, go back through, kind of recross that threshold, I think that would absolutely help my situation. That's a good idea.
Yeah. And one thing I used to do, especially when I was training with Kyrie, and he can confirm this, is that whenever we would get ready to do either a top set of stiff-legged deadlifts or hack squats, I would always use the bathroom right before the top set. So I'd get through all
Mm,
my warm-ups and it's like, all right, cool, we've got like the final weight loaded on. It's like I'm gonna go to the bathroom, right? And there were times where it's like I wouldn't even actually pee. But I would literally like pull my pants out like
mm,
I'm going to pee. And even if it was just like a couple drops that came
yeah.
out, it's like, all right, cool, whatever. I go wash my hands, and then it's like I dry my hands off, and then right before I walk out of the bathroom back onto the gym floor, there's a moment of
Mm,
it's time to go work, time to go kill. And then I open up that bathroom door, I walk back out, go straight to the machine, take another couple deep breaths, and then get on the machine and go kill.
mm. Yeah, I'm just kind of like visualizing that as you're saying it, like in me doing that in my gym. I can see that all being super valuable. I'm
Mhm.
definitely gonna try that tomorrow. Now tomorrow is arms and shoulders, so I don't know how intense I'm gonna get with that, right? But as much as you can with the arm and shoulder workout. So
Right. So then, question for you.
okay.
So we've kind of talked about like this eyes off theory, right? Where you're
Hmm.
kind of identifying easy way to kind of break it down is like on a scale of 1 to 10, in terms of like physiological activation to perform a task. If I were to
Hmm.
say, hey man, you need to go do a top set of preacher curls, right?
Hmm.
What is the level of activation you would need on a scale of 1 to 10 to perform that task to the best of your ability?
So with preacher curls specifically, biceps
Yep.
have always been a pretty hard area for me to connect to. So I'm going to need damn near a 10. For a preacher curl, I am probably hyping myself up like it's a squat or, like a just any type of bicep movement. I do
Mhm.
try to get pretty mentally into that. Whereas something like a triceps, I'd probably, unless it's like a heavy compound, of course. Like if we're just talking single arm tricep extension, 7, 8, something like that. It doesn't take a lot. But with biceps, I definitely have to give a lot more effort in that regard.
Right. And so that's where like this eyes off model comes into play. So it's like when you can identify for every single exercise in the gym, like, hey, what level of kind of activation do I need for this? Then you
Mm-hmm.
start going into the toolbox and saying, okay, maybe this song is going to hype me up too much for these single arm triceps. Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe this song is only going to get me to like a 7 when in reality I need to be a 10.
Mm.
Or maybe thinking about that last place finish that I got at my show is going to hype me up too much, or it's
Yeah.
not going to hype me up enough for a set of deadlifts.
I have a bad habit of using like tragedies in my life as fuel for top
Hmm.
sets.
Yep.
And it's hard to come down from that, man. It's not easy. That's definitely the one I struggle with the most because if I'm having one of those days where, the songs aren't working, everything's not working, that's kind of my last resort is I'm going to think about people that have died. I'm going to picture their faces
Mhm.
while I'm in the middle of the set. It's hard to come down from that. That's a situation where if I'm doing that on a set of hack squats and then I'm having to go back up to the front desk to deal with somebody, I'm probably going to be a little bit of a dick if they say something stupid. If like,
Mhm.
we have signs that says all the prices in front of us. If you ask me
Yep.
52 times what a month costs, and I just got done doing that to myself, probably going
Yep.
to be a little snappy with it.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely. And that's tough being able to kind of titrate back and forth because using that as a tool, I like to think of these as like cost, right?
mm,
So using those tragedies, like that's a psychologically expensive tool that you just use for that one set. And
mm.
especially if those hack squats are really early on in the session, which if if I know you're being trained by Joe, I don't know if he's going to put hack squats like second in your session, maybe.
They're like the
Maybe he
middle.
would.
They're like the
Yeah.
middle, kind of early half middle of it. I would say, yeah,
Right. But if you still got three more exercises and like you just said, you just blew your load,
yeah.
then it's like, oh, that was really expensive. What sort of effect is that going to have on the rest of the session? Because
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely gone too far in terms of getting myself hyped up before for a top set. And then I get done with the top set and I'm just completely spent. And it's like,
Mm.
oh, I have a back off set I need to do as well.
Yeah,
And then now the back off set suffers.
for sure. And I also think another issue I have with it too is I tend even so like I was mentioning earlier, I know I need a 9 or a 10 for biceps. I know I don't need a 10 for triceps. I still have a habit of giving a 10 to triceps, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. I think I need
So
to give a 10 to everything when in reality, do we? Probably not, right?
So the way I'm understanding that you're seeing this though is that like giving a 10 is like in terms of effort,
Hmm.
but really with the eyes off model, it's more so how much physiological activation am I causing within myself. So like a 10 would be like that fight or flight response, being like I'm about to be chased by a bear.
Okay.
So it's like, do you need to get yourself up to a 10 to train biceps in terms of your physiological activation?
I feel like if I don't take it now, mind you, if we're talking about like a set where we're doing 30 reps, maybe the first 10 of those I'm not there. Maybe
Right.
in the middle, kind of towards the end, I flip that on. Does that make
Hmm.
more sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now,
Yep.
that being said, towards the end, so I guess maybe it was seeming like I was portraying like we need to go 10 right off the bat on everything.
Mhm.
Do you think there's a benefit to on almost everything kind of working up to that max point, but kind of playing within the line of it, or
How so?
So let's say I can take myself to the brink pretty reliably.
Mhm.
Is that going to be necessary? So, like, do we need to push ourselves to that psychological break on those body parts that may or may not need it? Because, like, for example, shoulders, triceps, they're stronger body parts for me. I can go
Mhm.
super intense on them without having to use those mental cues. But if I do use those mental cues, I kind of get a little bit of, maybe it's in my head. Maybe I get a little bit of a better pump when I do. Maybe I'm able to get like one more rep. But if I'm doing 30 reps, do we really have to get that? Because like you're saying, there's a cost. Do I
Mhm.
need to pay the piper for this extra rep in this situation where it's already a strong body part, it's already progressing super well?
Hmm. That's an interesting conversation, right? Because then the way I see it as well, like it can be beneficial.
Hmm.
And that's one of those things where it's like, well, it depends.
But then
Because over the course,
my worry with that though is if I do it too frequently, will I start to become almost desensitized to it?
potentially,
Mm,
especially if you're using the same cue over and over too much,
mm,
right? Because especially when you are using something that often, like, yeah, you can absolutely desensitize the effect
mm.
where it's more so like, hey, I have this tool in my back pocket that I can use, but am I going to blunt that tool over the course of time if I'm using it multiple times every single day?
I feel like that's what I've
Um,
done. Yeah.
the thing that the thing that I find to be probably most important is like, can you take a set of lateral raises to true failure while still executing the exercise correctly and not needing to be at a 10, right?
Okay.
Like, so do you need that? Like, if I were to say like, hey, you have one song that you know reliably will get you there every single time,
Mm,
right? Like, do you need that song for lateral raises to make sure you're actually hitting that maximum effort? If the answer is no, well, then you don't need to use that tool all the time. If
mm.
the answer is yes, well, then maybe we need to add in some more tools
Yeah.
to
So,
get you there.
so that's the tough part.
Mhm.
Because training to this level of intensity and failure is so new to me, I kind of feel like I almost do need that tool most of the time. And that
Mhm.
can be tricky because I definitely have noticed like even today I noticed it a little bit. Um, so first exercise on leg day is hip thrust. I'm going pretty heavy. I'm doing at least 405. My heavier
Yeah.
days I'm doing 5 plates. But then we
Yep.
go to the adduction machine. So it kind of feels like we're way up here for the first exercise. And I'm giving my all on the adduction machine, but it's not quite the same level of intensity. So then I have this point where I'm really intense, and then it kind of almost feels like I'll lose it by switching to that exercise. But in order to truly take that exercise to where I need it to be, I'm almost using some of those same mental cues, and it feels like I'm burning myself out because I'm already starting these mental cues at the hip thrust, on the adduction machine, on the leg extensions. Then I get to leg press. I've got a top set and a back off set there. Then I've got hack squats. I'm doing a double drop set there. It's like I should probably just save this for the hack squat and the leg press, but I haven't found a way to bring that level of intensity without also burning myself out psychologically. So I'm in this weird spot.
Yeah. Man, that's interesting, right? Because on one hand, like I don't want to tell you like no, don't train as hard as you
Yeah.
possibly can. Like you absolutely should.
Hmm.
But I think that's where you start to go ahead and you start to weigh out the cost benefit, right?
Yeah.
Where if you know that psychologically you are going to blow your load on the adductors or abductors,
Add the
adductors.
inner part. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like if you already blew your load on the hip thrusts to the point where now it's truly causing the next exercises to suffer, then it's like, okay, how do we find a happy medium where rather than being 100 on the hip thrusts and like an 80 here, can we find like a 93,
Uh,
93 for both to
mm,
the point where it's like we're still able to make those incremental progressions
mm.
across the board?
Okay.
Because like we talked about, there is a cost, and you've noticed it yourself where
I
it's like,
feel it.
hey, if I think about these things early on in the session that are going to hype me up, it could potentially have a detriment to my performance later on because
Absolutely.
it is such an emotional drain.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And yeah, and most of the time it's not like a huge issue, but it can be, and it can ruin a really good session if you're not careful with it. Yeah, definitely my biggest struggle is not being a all or nothing type person, right? Like I think a lot of
Mhm.
bodybuilders are like that. We're very all or nothing, and it's tough. But I guess each day I'm just going to try to crawl a little bit closer to that 95%. But it just in the back of my head, there's that fear of, am I going to go back to training like a, something I shouldn't say on a podcast.
Well, that's the thing too, where it's almost like, can you train yourself to still maximize your level of effort and that level of execution
Mm,
at a lower emotional intensity, but still bring the same level of physical intensity?
mm,
Because you don't necessarily need the emotional intensity to perform,
mm.
but it makes it easier to perform
Yeah,
in the
it definitely
moment.
does. 100%.
So it's like for that top set of like lateral raises, for instance, can you still get the maximum effort out of yourself even without kind of blowing your load psychologically?
Mm. And thinking about it in real time, I think this is one of the reasons that my sessions take so long because I'm not doing
Mhm.
super high volume by any means. I mean,
Right.
I think my leg day is like 15 sets total, and like that's including kind of the fluffier stuff like leg extensions, adductors.
Right.
In the past, I've done very, very high volume. I've done 30, 40, 50 sets and
Yeah.
for a body part, not just for a workout.
Damn.
Like stupid volume. And my workouts right now are probably just as long as those 30, 40 set workouts. And I think it's just because looking at it now, I think I'm having to really just sit there and collect myself and try to I think a good analogy for it that's kind of funny is, how in Dragon Ball these guys sit there and they charge up their aura and they're screaming,
Yep.
like that's what I'm doing inside of my head in between sets. And I'm sure maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes goes by and I'm just sitting there charging myself up, trying to get myself to that emotional place for each set basically.
Right. But I think something like that is a bit more necessary. Where taking your time in between sets, especially if you're a lower
Mm,
volume person, where it's like, hey, I have one top set, one back off set
mm,
for this specific exercise for the entire week.
mm,
Then it's like, oh, you really only get one or two opportunities at this. So you can't, like, the quality of that set needs to be so high in order for that low volume approach to actually work.
mm.
And so taking the 3, 4, 5 minute breaks, especially for something like a hack squat or, a high rep leg press set,
Oh
like
yeah.
totally warranted. Take your time, make sure that mentally you're approaching that set. But if you're someone who does like 3, 4, 5 sets of kind of like junk volume, reps in reserve,
Mm-hmm.
then do you need to be ready to like psychologically all out attack that set? Probably not. And so that's where
Mm.
you can take less time.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And for example, on my arm and shoulder day tomorrow, I have it programmed in 90-second rest. So I can't do that tomorrow. So that's one of the reasons
Mhm.
that the intensity feels a bit different on those days.
Right. And so for a day like that, I also use different cues, right? So for me,
Oh, okay.
on a day where like you're really trying to emphasize the pump, well, if you know that fatigue is going to build up quite quickly because of the 90-second rest, and
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to be able to maximize like the total number of reps because you're trying to just build up a crazy pump,
Mm-hmm.
then at that point, the psychological battle for me becomes how much pain can I tolerate in this session?
Okay.
And it now I start to gamify it for myself as, well, how much did the pump last week hurt? And can I make the pump hurt more this week?
Ah, okay.
And that's
Yeah.
kind of how I play the psychological game, especially because for me, like with biceps, I don't really connect well with biceps. So I
Mm,
do try to get a really, really good pump on them. And so now it becomes a game of the better the pump I get, the better I feel about how that exercise went. And so then it becomes how much pain can I cause just within the bicep itself?
mm.
And can I get to a point where it's so painful that it's like I can barely tolerate it? If I can do that, then I won that set.
Yeah, yeah. I remember one of the first arm and shoulder days that I did once Joe switched over my training. This is back when I was still doing stairs for like post workout cardio and upper days, and I had to sit down when I got done with my workout because I physically could not like rest my arms on the stair stepper. My shoulders and arms were so pumped. So that's interesting. I'm gonna definitely use that to just chase, which I am chasing the pump within that set, but I think I still probably am trying to amp myself up a little bit too much for it, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
because we don't need to do that there. I need to almost save that emotional bullet in the chamber for those other sessions because I'll burn myself out super easy. Like again, those really powerful emotional cues like death, tragedy, things like that. You can't really burn those out. I haven't found a way at least, but I don't like
Right.
to use those very frequently because it's emotional. Like I don't want to have to do that. It's a dark place. But yeah, so speaking of dark places, I think another area which is super important is specifically as bodybuilders, most of us are our own harshest critics. So, what is some of the self talk that you have within your either day, week, month, even a year? What are some things you tell yourself to keep yourself within a right state of mind? Because, on one hand, we don't want to be shitting on ourselves all the time. It's not good, it's not productive, it's not mentally healthy at all. But we also don't want to think our shit don't stink, right? Like, we don't want to hype
Mhm.
ourselves up too much. So, how do you find that middle ground?
Man, this one ranges quite a bit, right? Because there's
Mm.
any given day where it's like I'll wake up in the morning and it's like if I wake up in the morning and like my stomach's feeling like nice and flat and
Yeah.
I go look in the mirror and it's just like, oh, like the abs are looking a little bit better than normal, then it's just like, all right, cool. Like you look good right now,
Mm.
but you still need to get a lot better,
Mm.
right? And so it's like on those days, it's kind of just like, yeah, like a little bit of encouragement. I know like today I had my check-in day and I woke up this morning, I was like 2.5 pounds heavier than I was yesterday, and right now we're in a cut. And so like you never want to see in a cut, like, oh, you're up 2.5 pounds.
Mm.
But I had to emotionally detach myself from what that one specific data point was because there were some other variables that were changed.
Mm.
So normally on a normal week, I'll train Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, off Thursday, check in Friday,
Ah.
with Thursday being one a rest day and a zero carb day
Mm.
currently. So it's like when I wake up Friday morning, it's like I've flushed a lot of that inflammation out. I'm
Hmm.
usually hitting a new low because it was a zero carb day. Today I woke up and we had switched things this week because I trained Monday, Tuesday. I was off on Wednesday so my girl and I could go to the Christmas market, and then I trained Thursday. It was a heavy back day. So then I
Mm.
woke up this morning, I saw him 2.5 pounds up. And initially it was, oh my God, my coach is going to think I'm not executing the plan. Why am I getting
Yeah.
heavier right now? And then I had to talk to myself logically and be like, you trained back heavy yesterday.
Mm.
You're going to have the inflammation. Also,
Absolutely.
you only slept about 6.5 hours
Mm.
compared to like the normal 8 that you get, which
Yeah.
means that there was a shorter amount of time between your last meal and weighing in as well.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Mm.
And
So.
so then it's like you kind of have to have like a logical conversation with yourself.
Mhm.
And actually, an analogy that I use for some of my like sports side clients is I like to give them an analogy of like you're sitting in a courtroom, you are the judge. All of this unproductive self-talk is like the plaintiff that
Mm.
is like trying to create this story that you're telling yourself. And then all of this productive self-talk that can be beneficial is like the defendant. And so you let both of them say their piece to you, and then you as a judge get to decide which story do I want to believe more? Because I can choose to
Mm.
go down the rabbit hole of the unproductive self-talk, or I can choose to go down the rabbit hole of the productive self-talk.
Mm. That I like how you're painting that picture of the courtroom there. That I'm a very visual learner. Like I'm just like I'm playing like a movie in my head when you're saying that. So that links up. I like that. Yeah, and something that also, just with your specific situation there of the weight in a cut, something that Joe does that has actually helped me really be out of my head when it comes to weight on a check-in day, because I'll have that same thing. If my weight is not trending in the direction it's supposed to on a check-in day, I'll be like, I don't want my coach to think that I didn't deviate from the plan. I'm 100% on it. He actually has me track my weight every day, and then it plugs into like an algorithm within a spreadsheet, which gives me an average. And that's really cool to see because I can see my averages throughout the week. It's like, okay, this is on track with last week. Even though there's a little bit of different variance here, it's still within the lines of what I would expect to see from that. So that's something that's been really helpful for me mentally, personally.
Yeah, and honestly, that's something I should definitely implement because over the course of like several weeks, it's like, yeah, my average weights are going down, but it's
Mm,
like I'll have a spike every now and then where it's like 2 or 3 pounds up after a leg day, or
yeah.
2 or 3 pounds up after I have my off-plan meal with my lady.
Mm,
And then it's like I'm focusing in on that, and then there has to be this internal conversation of okay, what pathway are we going to go down in terms of self-talk, right?
Mm.
Now, there's lots of different things that I kind of focus on with the self-talk. Like, I want to go open bodybuilding. I'm 200 pounds.
Mm. And
So it's like
I don't think I
I'm
asked. So you turn 30 tomorrow. What's your height? Because everybody with bodybuilding, they want to know age, they want to know height,
yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm just under 5'10". I'm like 5'9" and like 7/8 or something like that.
Yeah, I think I'm right there
Um,
with you. When I'm shredded, I'm 5'9". When I'm a little on the fluffier side, I'm like 5'10", 5'10 and a half. So
yeah. So
yeah,
but I should say I'm 5'10". So 5'10", 200
yep,
pounds. This is the leanest I've ever been at 200 pounds. Like I've got
mhm,
abs right now,
yeah,
but I mean, in terms of size, I also have like a 6'1" wingspan. So when you
yeah.
talk about filling out a frame, it's like, okay, now I need to put on some serious mass. Like I'm gonna need to be a guy who's like 290 in the off season to truly have like an open bodybuilding frame.
And I think that this is something that can be valuable for people as well. You know, I'm 25, you're 30. In the grand scheme of things, we are both super young when it comes to
Yeah.
bodybuilding. We've got so much time left, and a lot of people. I've talked with multiple people on the podcast because, honestly, 25, my age is. I'm typically on the older side when it comes to people I'm talking to on here,
Yeah.
and a lot of them echo this thought of. I don't have enough time. There are other people that are already ahead of me. I'm 22, but oh, this dude Anton just turned pro at like 19. It's like,
Yep.
how how would you deal with that situation if they were a client that came to you with those kind of thoughts of self-doubt just based on them seeing others of their age, which
Mhm.
I think I think I know the route you're going to go down with, like, how they're a drop in the bucket, it's not super common, stuff like that. But what were, other than that, what are some of the things you would say to somebody to kind of talk them off the ledge, so to speak, of that negative self-talk?
Right. I think it really comes down to first off, like the self-awareness of when the self-talk is actually happening. So it's like
Mm,
if you notice that you're really having these habits of talking yourself down whenever you open up social media,
mm,
then it might need to be something that's very intentional when you are going on social media initially. So
mm,
the first thing I might have them ask themselves is like, am I in a good mindset to open up this app right now before you even go log on to it? Because I think a lot of times we just kind of open up our phone and just mindlessly open up the app. And then all of
mm.
a sudden you see like, oh, youngest IFBB pro ever, or like, oh, this 23-year-old just won 2 shows, or like
Yeah,
Urs just moved up into the open literally with one off season and won
yeah,
2 shows. And I'm like, or like I see a Jordan Hutchinson, I'm like, dude, this dude's like a year younger than me or a year older than me, and it's like he's
yeah,
literally on the Olympia already.
yeah.
And so I think it comes down to focusing on the process over
Mm,
the outcome and being able to really just, again, kind of like you're saying, a drop in the bucket. The analogy I use is like laying a brick,
mm,
right? And so I go back to this analogy of the bricklayers where there's an old like allegory where they talk about like, oh, a guy's walking through town, he sees this guy like he's laying bricks, he's building a wall, and he asks the guy, he says, oh, like, what are you doing? And the guy says, oh, like I'm building a house, like these people are paying me to do this job, right? So I want to make money, so I'm building up this wall for them.
mm,
She's like, oh, cool. Keeps walking through town, sees another guy putting bricks down. He's like, oh, like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm building a home for my family, like this is where we're gonna live.
mm.
Then he keeps walking through town. He sees another guy building up a brick wall, and he goes, "Oh, like what are you doing?" He goes, "I'm building a cathedral." And so, as you're going through your own bodybuilding journey, I kind of like to remind them of that analogy of like your entire bodybuilding journey is this big cathedral that you're working on. And so, even when you just talk about like doing one show,
Mm,
like your first show, it's like that's just a portion of your cathedral in terms of like the body of work that you're going to accomplish over the course of this, right? So that person, they're just further ahead in building their cathedral because maybe they have really good genetics, or maybe they're coming from, a different sporting background. Like they've been a whatever, like a gymnast. And so it's like they've got a leg up on you. They've got really good um like body control. So it's like they connect with
mm,
muscle movements easier, whatever it might be, right? There's a million different variables.
mm,
Um, but yeah, at the end of the day, it really just comes down to, okay, what is the cathedral that you're building? What does that look like?
mm. Yeah, that's super interesting. And that's something that, as I've got older, I've definitely got a bit better with that self talk. It's like, because, I think to myself, it's like, man, I'm 25. I've never won a class. I've never won an overall. I see people that are 25, they're already competing in nationals. They're already first call out in nationals. Actually, just today, I was watching an episode on the Think Big Bodybuilding channel. This guy, funny enough, his name is Stephen King, I believe. He's like 21 years old. He just turned pro
Yeah.
at nationals. Just super freak. And in the past, seeing something like that would have honestly probably put me into like a minor depression. It would make me think like,
Hmm.
man, I'm fucked. I'm not going anywhere. But now, it honestly kind of just inspires me. It's like, man,
Hmm.
this is such a different situation. It's like, why be negative about it? This guy, good for him. There's enough to go around. Someone else's success does not impact mine. Them building up their cathedral here does not impact my ability to build my own. So I just have to be within my own process and not get into my head about what others are doing.
Absolutely. I actually had a moment like that last night. So my coach is Justin Shire,
Mm-hmm.
and so I hired him in February of 22. So we're getting close to 4 years together.
Nice.
And when I had first hired him, he had been working with this one guy. I'm not going to say his name just for privacy's sake,
Yeah.
but he was a young dude. He was like 20, 21 years old, right? Kid was a freak. Um, and over the course of like several years, like I noticed like, oh, like he wasn't really posting anymore, and like I had followed him. And then one day, like I kind of recognized like, oh, this he's not really like competitively bodybuilding anymore.
Oh.
Like he had like gotten married, he's like working, like he's focused on like career, his wife, like, and so he'd stopped doing trying to maximize his bodybuilding, for
Mm.
lack of better words. And then all of a sudden, Justin posted him last night, and I see him, and like he looks like he's about to be like a super heavyweight on the national stage. And
Mm.
I go and I click on his profile, and I see the picture side by side. And 10 weeks ago, he put on 35 pounds and gone from like a pretty like good looking like gym bro to like, oh, you're a super heavyweight bodybuilder. You're walking around at like 270.
That Kevin Lerone effect.
And he's like 24 years old.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah.
And so I looked at my girl and I was like, dude, what the fuck? This doesn't make sense. I was like, and Justin even like when he reposted it, he even said like some people just got it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's one of those dudes that it's just like, you've got what it takes to be at that next level.
Yeah.
But then that also made me have the internal conversation with myself because initially I was like, damn, like he put on or he made more progress in 10 weeks than I've made in the last like 2 years.
Nah, nah, nah.
But then I have to go back to the conversation of, well, why am I doing this? Right? Is it just to get the pro card? It's like,
Mm.
no, it's not.
And that's where I was going to go with it too. I think at the end of the day, unfortunately, some people are just built more for this than us,
Yeah.
and there's nothing we can do about that.
No.
So at the end of the day, you have to do this for the love of the game. You have
Hmm.
to do this because you love the process, and regardless of what that outcome is, you love the journey. So we can be obsessed over pro cards. We can be obsessed over different titles because for some people, turning pro ain't even good enough. Some people, if they turn pro and they don't win a show, that's the end of the world to them. Like their entire world is destroyed. It's like, whereas me or you, we'd be thrilled just to be at a high level of national competition and turn pro. Like that's a dream. Whereas for these people, they have different expectations for themselves. So
Yeah.
we just got to stay within our own lanes and do this because we love it. Because ultimately, if we do it because we love it, it doesn't matter where we end up because we're fulfilled, we're happy, and we're accomplished with on what we set out to do.
Absolutely. And that's I think you framed that really, really well in terms of knowing why you're doing it, having the love for it. And that's part of the reason why I love listening to Joe, your coach,
Mm-hmm.
Percher, is because like you look at him, like he's not some genetically elite dude who's just like gonna do his first show and then walk into nationals first time pro card, right? Like he's been at it for 15 years and he's gonna
Yeah.
keep being at it before he even gets a pro card. But
Yep.
it's like that's something that's a lot more relatable to people like us, where it's
Mm-hmm.
like for me, I've done two shows in my life. First one was back in 2019. It was like some natural federation.
Mm-hmm.
I got sixth place, dead last. Then I did Texas State, sixth place, dead last. So for me, a huge win is to like just beat someone right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. So that, like, on my second show there, that was the win for me. I did not win my class. I did not win an overall
Mhm.
or anything. With my second show there, I actually, funnily enough, competed against one of the guys who beat me at that first show, and I was able to
Mhm.
beat him at the second show. And
Mhm.
the way that they called everything out is, so I did novice bodybuilding, novice classic, and then open classic. And in the order of awards, they start with bodybuilding, then they go to the classic novice, and then the
Yep.
classic open. So I didn't know where I was going to place on those other two ones when I'm up there getting awarded for bodybuilding. And me and him are both in classic novice and classic bodybuilding. They call us all out. They call his name first. I'm like, okay, let's hear it. And then they call my name next. And I'm like, and there were only four of us. So I'm like, I'm not super happy with this, but at least I beat that guy. And then they go on to call on the classic classes, and then I placed way better in there. I placed like third out of 12 or 14 or something in the
Yes.
classic open. So for while a lot of people would not look at that as a victory because they did
Mhm.
not win, I was emotional, happy crying with my family afterwards because I was like, man, I feel seen now. I feel like
Yeah.
what I'm doing is working. It's just going to take a while. I just got to repeat this process and continue to get better. So that was a big thing for me. But a lot of other people I know, they would have got that result and they would have been like, man, I didn't win again. What am I doing wrong? And then that's just where that negative self talk comes into it all again.
Right. And I think an important thing that you did there is you defined what your win was.
Mm,
And I don't think a lot of people have that particular habit
mm,
of being able to define what the win is because they use that first place trophy as the North Star, where it's like, if I don't achieve that first place, well, then I didn't win anything else. And like the
mm,
whole thing was basically done in vain.
mm.
So I think having that outlook and then carrying that forward and being able to really identify, hey, what are my actual strengths? Because like when I look at someone like myself from a muscle building and fat loss standpoint, like are my genetics elite? No. But from a mental standpoint, I know I have the stamina to do this for another 10 years.
100%.
And knowing that, I know I'm going to end up surpassing guys who don't have the same stamina, even if they are genetically elite,
Mm.
because I know I can push myself and I can sustain the work ethic for a long period of time, and that will get me further than I would have gotten without it.
Mm. Yeah, me and Joe were talking about that a little bit on the podcast we did, and he was talking about how him and Tommy, when they had their podcast, one of their sayings was outwork and outlast. And I think
Yep.
that's crucial. For those of us that are not a Keon, we're gonna have to put some skin in the game. We're gonna have to put some time in the
Yeah.
game. And the older I've gotten, the more I actually learned to appreciate that.
Yep.
16-year-old me was pissed that I could not be 250 pounds at 2% body fat right then and there. 16-year-old me wanted that right then and there. But now, as I'm getting older, I'm really just starting to love the process, love the journey, and not get too caught up in the future that I miss out on the here and now.
And it's like I went to nationals this past weekend and I saw like the heavyweights. I don't know if you're familiar with him, Ranson,
Yeah,
but like he won the heavyweights. And I
he's been at it for
remember
a
I was
while.
taught he's been at it for a while. I remember I was talking to Justin Shire about like some of the results, and he was just like, "Yeah, dude, like Ransom looked great," and he was like, "Dude, I competed against him, and I won my pro card in 2021."
That's
So
crazy.
it's like that's a guy who's been cracking on for years and
Yeah,
years and years, and it's like he finally broke through. And for most of us, with the types of genetics that we have, like that's what it's going to take. Because the
yeah,
guy who took second to him was like this big, like bubbly black dude. I remember I saw him walk on stage,
he's
and I was like,
huge.
"Dude, that dude." I was like, "That dude looks like a Keem." He looks
Yeah,
like just a smaller version of Akeem.
yeah, I can see that now that you're saying it. Yeah,
And I was just like, oh, he's gonna win. But then you start to see like, okay, well, Ransom beat him because like he's more detailed, right?
mm,
So it's like you have a genetic specimen who wasn't necessarily in elite shape, but then Ransom spent the years and he put it all together. And then he came out on top and he won his class. And it's just like, that's a good story. That's what people need to see. That for most of us, it's going to take us multiple cracks at a national show before we break through.
that's bodybuilding.
Yeah.
That's bodybuilding. Like, we hear about the Cody Montgomerys and all these
Yep.
people who they're
Phil Heath.
yeah, we hear about all that they only have a couple of amateur shows and then they turn pro. But to me, that's kind of like those people are aliens. They're not really they're of course amazing bodybuilders, but they're not the norm. For most people who want to pursue bodybuilding, I'd say and bodybuilding specifically, not
Yeah.
not men's physique, not classic,
Mhm.
not anything else. You're looking at a decade
At
minimum,
least.
minimum.
Yep.
Yes, and a lot of people, I would say to anyone who is listening and they think, oh, 10 years? Really? I'd honestly almost say that it's not for you. And that's okay.
Yep.
It's not for everybody. It's not supposed
Absolutely.
to be. Competing in general is not even supposed to be for everybody. If
Yeah.
someone is that type of person who that first place trophy is that important to them, it's the make or break. It determines on if that was their win or not, if they get that. If you've done a couple shows and you're not one of these genetic freaks who just sails through the ranks, I would honestly almost encourage that person to rethink the whole competition thing because you can be a bodybuilder and not step on stage, right? Like if it's that damaging to your mental health to have to get that trophy, it can be more harm than good, I think, for a lot of people. We just got to have that self introspection to realize that, I think.
Yeah. And I think it just comes down to nailing your why
Mm,
as early on as possible as you can and letting that why sustain you. So it's like for me, it's really just about developing a pro level physique, but also just
100%.
challenging myself. Like I've got strength goals in the gym that are completely separate from bodybuilding. Like I want to
Mm,
deadlift 600 for 10.
yeah.
It's like that's not conducive to bodybuilding for most
It's
people.
cool as fuck, though.
It is cool, right? But it's like, is that bodybuilding? Like, yeah, it'll probably help. Like, I mean, I'm certainly not going to pull 600 for 10 and not have a big back,
Damn straight. Everybody
but
I've ever seen
it's
who does.
But it's like these are things where it's like, okay, even if I never do win a show, like if I hit 600 for 10, it's like I'll be pretty happy with that. Like,
Yeah.
so there are other goals within like the training and whatnot that I think you can leverage. So that way your entire North Star doesn't have
Mm.
to be just that first place trophy.
I'm all about setting small goals on the way to a big goal. And
Absolutely.
I really like for me, I want to, we went from dead last to placing well. Now I want to win my class. And then
Hmm.
I want to win an overall eventually. And then
Hmm.
I want to just go to nationals. Then I want to kind of, okay, let's third, second call out and then just keep progressing as much as I'm allowed to, as much as my body will allow me to, because effort wise, that's not a question. Execution wise, that's not a question. If my body will allow me to get to where I want it to go, it's going to happen. If not, it's out of my hands. And that's just part of the things we have to accept.
And the last key to that puzzle is like you don't know who's going to show up to nationals on the day. So it's like
Exactly.
you could have a physique on the national stage that's going to place fourth and be one or two spots away from a pro card that would have won North Americans or would have won Junior or Universe or whatever it might have been, like a different pro qualifier, you would have won that show. But if you get three dudes who show up that are Phil Heath reincarnated, which, low odds of that, but you get what I'm saying.
It's not
They're
impossible,
just
though.
flat out better bodybuilders than you, then you could have a pro level physique and not turn pro.
And something I would want to caveat there is just because those people place better does not necessarily mean they're better bodybuilders.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean they're working harder than you. That doesn't mean they're giving more than you. They and let's assume they are working just as hard. That way it's not the situation of, oh, this guy's eating McDonald's a week out and he still wins the show, right? But some like a Ronnie Coleman, someone who has amazing genetics and also amazing work ethic. There's nothing we can do about that. So why let it
Nope.
upset us? We just got to look at it like this majestic thing. Like, hey, man, that's cool. I'm glad I was here to witness it.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, we're at about an hour and a half here. I think we covered a lot of good ground. That was a super super interesting conversation.
Yeah, it
Is
was.
there anything you want to go over before we close off?
Uh, Nothing. I mean, honestly, like I could have 10 more of these
I know,
same
right?
type of conversations, right?
Yeah, yeah, man. It's like this is just getting my wheels turning. It's awesome. I'm sure, like, because this is close to bedtime for me. I think you said it was too. I guarantee you, I'm probably gonna have like dreams about like the mental side of bodybuilding and like stuff like that. I'm probably gonna be dreaming about training, stuff like that. So it's cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, as you start working through like some of these different cues and strategies and tools, I know we touched on a lot of them.
Yeah,
Feel
I
free to
know.
just like keep
Yeah.
me in the loop, shoot me a message like, hey man, like this thing really worked, or nah, I didn't really find this to be like super successful for
Oh,
me. And
absolutely, for sure.
we can also talk through like different types of strategies that might work.
Yeah, I know. I, for one, regardless of what everyone else thinks, I'm definitely going to watch this video back a couple of times because I know there's a bunch of nuggets that I can glean from here that will definitely help me with my personal bodybuilding journey.
No.
So,
Yeah,
but
well, I appreciate you having me on, man.
yeah, man, I'm glad you came on. It's been an awesome conversation. I'd love to have you back on sometime, talk about some similar topics or anything else. So.
Yeah, I'd love to, man. You just let me know and we'll make it happen.
All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. If you made it to the end of this podcast, please leave a 5-minute crew comment. I see you guys doing it. Thank you for all the support recently on the channel. With the last video that we dropped was the biggest ever on the channel. I hope to continue to put out great episodes like this. I think that this one is going to be very close, if not just as good as that last one we did. In terms of like the recording, the quality of conversation, I think it's right up there with us. I think this is going to do very well. But regardless, thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. Check out all the links in the description below. I'll have a link to all of Gabe's affiliates and his coaching services down there as well. This has been another episode of the Iron Obsession Podcast. See you guys next time.